So welcome to the Sustainability Enclosures with Crafty Distilling Conference and the IWSC. We've got a great bunch of people with us today to talk about sustainability enclosures. So I'll just go around and let you introduce yourself. Alessandro, do you want to go first?
Thank you very much, Rosie. Hi, I'm Alessandro. I'm the export area manager for Labrenta. We are a company who produces premium enclosures, especially for the spirits market.
And Alex?
Alex James. I'm from London to Lima Gin and Satura Rum. I'm the owner-founder of those brands, based in Peru.
And I'm Kieran Healey-Ryder from Whyte Mackay whiskey makers based in Glasgow, and I look after whiskey discovery, but also I'm a member of our sustainability team.
Wonderful. Welcome. Thank you all for joining us today. So, Alessandro, you're going to kick us off with sort of what are the closure options that are currently available? If you can take us through that, that'd be wonderful.
So when it comes to sustainability, as you probably are aware, there is a lot of buzz nowadays. Everybody is looking for a sustainable solution. And as a producer, we're trying to give to the market what they're asking for, obviously. So let's start with the king of sustainability, the T-shaped monoblock with natural cork. So it's just a closure, a T-shape or bar top is the most ethical sourced bar top because as you can think about it, it's just a monoblock with one material made out of only natural cork. So it means that doesn't have much CO2 as the other one, but also unless you don't want to throw into the general waste, is really easy to recycle, obviously. And then the second one is the FSC wood, obviously. The limit of the FSC wood that is greatly because FSC is all the wood that came out from Labrenta is FSC, is certificated that not any tree has been cut for to rescue any kind of wood that we're using for our corks, but every tree we cut it, we're gonna replant it. The limit that you can see with FSC wood is that the end of life is gonna be the general waste, but like all the other closures, because you cannot create any other closure that is going to disappear on the bottle. So it means the best solution when it comes to FSC wood, obviously, and the whiskey makers know very well, it very well, is FSC wood with natural cork. The limit that you can find is the glue between the leg and the top. And we found a solution for that. We're going to use some Sugara, that is our patented blend. Is one of the materials of the mixed cycling family. Mixed cycling is part of a Labrenta group, and what we're trying to do is reduce the CO2 and reduce the plastic. Basically, we use 90% of organic waste like rice wheat, food, marc, coffee, cork, or others, cork for the Sugara, in order to reduce the plastic on the legs and also on the top. In this way, we're going to avoid any kind of glue because there is no glue between the leg and the head because it can be conjected, but also there is no glue to collant both materials because it becomes just one material. So that's the Sugara. The aim of Sugara is reduce the use of plastic and have a lower environmental impact. NPS system, it could be good for the wood because at the moment, the majority of the producers are using chemicals to varnish the wood, but with the no paint system, you can varnish actually the wood with a darker wood color without any kind of chemicals. And that's, as you can imagine, really, really good for the environment. No-glue system is the technique I was talking before. It means that we're going to co-inject the synthetic material and the waste from other part of the production with a co-injection, with a bending, with a snap fit, with a coupling, and with a ultrasound. The good part of this one is that you have no glue and the leg is way more resistant. Over here, I've got an example of the king I was mentioned before, the T-shaped monoblock. The limit of this one is the aesthetic, obviously, but also the cost. Because when it comes to large volumes, the cost of this particular shape of natural cork is kind of the limit. The best seller worldwide is the second one, the boot with natural cork. You can see over here, and it looks gorgeous. Whiskey makers, again, know it very well. And then there is the Sugara. This is my favorite way that we can varnish the Sugara with the Sugar White. It really looks stylish, and especially for gym brands, seems to be the trend to follow. And then it's not about sustainability, obviously, but as you can see, you really can go heavily bespoke with this type of items. That's pretty much all. I hope I've been fast enough.
That's great. Thank you so much. So I want to talk a little bit now about where we think the industry is going in terms of stoppers. Like, how are they becoming more sustainable? And what are the sort of consumer demands and reactions from different types of closures in terms of sustainability?
From an industry standpoint, I mean, sustainability is one of the great levelers. So every aspect that we need to solve for as drinks brands is probably a challenge that other categories are solving themselves. So there are great forums, just as today is a great forum to come together and look at those problems together. So there's a high level of confidence that these things will be solved quite quickly moving forward. From my perspective, I think the introduction of things like the deposit return scheme will really accelerate conversations around the actual core packaging. And we really need to get into some of the things Alessandro talked about, be that the glue connected to the plastic top, etc. One of the key differences for our categories, and Alex and I, our products are not necessarily fast consumption. They will potentially sit on a shelf and be enjoyed over time. And that brings with it different challenges from a packaging perspective. I think, to come to your last point, Rosie, from a consumer standpoint, there's an element that there's an expectation that we are doing these things already. And in certain cases with certain brands, that's true. There are brands that are eminently more sustainably packaged than others, and they're already available to buy. And there are other brands that need to play catch up. So as consumers become more informed and educated about what the truth of that situation is, and they are going to have higher demands. But right now, I would say there is a clear trend towards consumers buying brands that are more rooted in their community, that are environmentally responsible, and that are able to articulate where they are on a journey to achieve the big goals that we've all been talking about, especially after COP26. That trend is still there. Consumers definitely want to buy smarter. That being said, that's not necessarily changing the action we as an industry are already taking. And I think this conversation, other organisations such as Fuel Change, which we belong to, are really accelerating the work that we do. There's an enormous amount of entrepreneurial, agile spirits going on. And Alessandro's company are just one of many companies that are actually taking the opportunity to think in a much smarter way. And that entrepreneurial spirit is really helping us get to solutions quicker, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's interesting when you talk about, what the consumers think you're currently doing versus what you should be doing as well, because I think people will consumers will assume that you're doing these things, but I think it's important to help them to understand where you are on that journey, because doing something towards it is better than doing nothing, obviously, but it will take a while for the whole industry to level up to the right point where everyone's doing the best they can, I guess. But yeah, I think it's all going in the right direction.
Yeah, on that point though, Rosie, I think the other aspect of it is we're talking specifically about packaging, and what's become really clear is it's much more important to have that connected proposition that speaks to more aspects of it. So whilst typically retailers are making demands of brands, and brands are responding admirably to what sits on the shelf, actually we also need to be cognizant of what happens all the way through that manufacturing process and all the way through to the circular economy in terms of recycling. That's the kind of the golden opportunity. I think in the next 5 years, we will see drinks industry in particular get to that total solution from birth to grave, really. And I think we will need to together help consumers understand why that's as important as the physical product that is sat on shelf and then hopefully being enjoyed at home.
Just going to say, I think consumers and producers are pretty well aligned in where they're going with sustainable solutions. I think everyone wants it. I mean, maybe in different parts of the world, it's a bit different. Like here we are in Peru. I mean, there's not as high a value placed on your sustainable solutions, although it's getting there. I don't think people would necessarily in this country buy my spirit based on its what I consider my sort of quite high values on sustainability. But obviously I export mainly anyway, so it'll catch up.
I just wanted to say a couple of things really shortly. The history of the whiskey is well known, and the natural leg is accomplished this history for the last centuries. So I know that it's going to be difficult to change the mind of that, especially because we saw already that natural cork is a great way to accomplish the sustainability according to the market right now. What I would like to say that the liquid in this case, when it comes to spirits, is different than wine, because with the wine, if you got a really high price, high value wine, obviously it's difficult to put some kind of synthetic lag on it, but you really need to go with natural cork because of the oxygen. Luckily for us, luckily for everybody in the spirits industry, is not exactly like that when it comes to gin, to vodka, is not a crucial part like in the wine it is. So this helps to move to other materials. But why move to other materials? Because from my point of view, when a client came to me and asking me about sustainability, there can be various scenarios, obviously, but one of them is, wow, I want the most sustainable option in the market, but then the cost doesn't allow them to go with that. In the other way, when big corporate came to us and asked for a great sustainable solution, there could be some kind of issues because obviously they got huge volumes, and when there are huge volumes, the focus on cost are really important. And sometimes I must admit that still now, the price could be a crucial part of the decision-making process. And then at the end, last thing I wanted to highlight, I can tell you in Italy is various from each city where you're going to throw your corks with the material. So if you think of the whole legislation in the whole world, in France, you should put the natural cork on just on the floor, for example. And in Italy, you need to put in general waste. So the whole law, when it comes to end of the life of the closure, especially because the majority of the closure has 2 different or 3 different materials, at the moment is not ready, is not well developed from our and my point of view.
Just to respond to that, Alessandro, I thought it was very articulate. From a consumer standpoint, I do think there's an opportunity, and not taking away from what Alex said around consumers are different in different parts of the world. There's the cost of solving for these things can be accommodated, particularly for spirits within premium price points. And as we move forward, the cost will hopefully come down. But I do think there is a need, and some of the advocacy work we're doing through the various trade associations is for governments to align on their statutory procedures for recycling and to have more commonality. Today, clearly in a very divided world, but there's still within an organisation such as the EU very big regional variance in terms of what you can and cannot do and what you are and are not required to do. And actually, given this is, it's a truly planet-wide situation, I'd really hope that within the next couple of years, governments align and it makes it simpler for business to solve for these problems. We are not there today.
We're definitely not there, but especially because maybe you're going to find that the way to throw away everything in a pot of some cream, like the Nutella one, but you're gonna have it in the spirits bottle, so nobody knows where to throw the cork, especially because, as I said, because if you're gonna open that bottle in New Jersey, you're gonna put somewhere, but if you're gonna do it in Italy, it's gonna be maybe another type of waste. So that's a big limit, and also the value of the final customers in terms of sustainability with the so wide possibilities you got when you go in front of the shelves is another limit. It's really difficult to let them understand if you are 100% sustainable or not. I'm seeing them I must admit, the Scottish market is well ahead if you compare to other parts of the world, because I can see that sustainability is a really big focus, but there are other parts of the world where we work, like for example, India, where there is a lot of work to do. I'm not saying that everybody are in the same state of mind, but when it comes to Scottish, you can clearly see the way that is taking the road. When you go to other countries, it is more challenging.
I think one of the things that's common between Alex's brand and ours, and it's interesting that you say about Scotland, I think it's slightly bigger than that. I think there are definitely producers who are rooted in their place, and that's the commonality, I think, between us and with Alex. But if you're rooted in your place, you have a respect for your local environment that doesn't exist in other categories. And I think if you have that respect, we as whiskey makers, as Scotch makers, are clearly trading on the legacy of Scotch, the history, the place it is to be here in Glasgow and in the Highlands where we distill. I think that comes with it a certain set of behaviours that if you're going to be authentic in what you bring to market, you kind of have to deal with that. And I don't think it's just Scotland, but as nice that you said it is. But I see the same in Ireland, I see the same in Japan, and certainly there's a couple of producers in Peru that are doing some exemplary work in this space. I think it's all to do with being rooted in your place.
Yeah, and I think that's definite, isn't there? There's a definite trend in all sorts for being, rooted in your place and sourcing as much as you can. Obviously Peru doesn't produce closures, so I have to import them one way or another. Well, I think they do produce some, but the reliability is not, and for the size that I need, is not there. But I agree with that. So from the bottles, we source our bottles locally. It comes with its problems, and that leads on to, in fact, part of my decision making with which type of closure I use, which I think I'll talk about in a minute. And I have a very sort of specific, a very sort of different sort of set of circumstances to most other brands who can access closures more readily. I either have to bring them over myself or rely on a local distributor. There is one here that sort of sells some of the Labrenta corks, but not nearly enough of the range, unfortunately. And I've used, I've used my last batch of bottles. I used Labrenta corks, but now they ran out of supply for the last 6 months, which has given me a major headache. So I've had to be a bit more creative in my solutions. I
can understand the pain, Alex. I can understand the pain. I mean, we do work greatly with Peru, actually, but as the situation worldwide, as you can imagine, the supply chain at the moment is a challenging time for the supply chain.
All very interesting points. It's something I talk about a lot, is in terms of how things are recycled and how things are sustainable. In terms of, if you look just at the UK, every county's got a different recycling sort of concept of how they do things. Like some places you can't recycle glass. We only got recycling glass in Tunbridge Wells in Kent. a year ago, 2 years ago, maybe. Before that, I'd have to take all my glass to a bottle bank, which I did, but a lot of people wouldn't do that. They'd just go, I'm just going to put it in the normal bin. So I think it's the infrastructure needs to be there so that we, like, as producers, can supply things to customers and be able to tell them what to do as well. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done, but I do think it's definitely moving in the right direction, which is exciting. So let's talk a little bit about sort of the pros and cons of sustainable stoppers.
Yeah, I could talk about what some of the decisions that I make, so I did a little table yesterday, like to help explain my decision making. I mean, I certainly had a caveat that I have a very specific scenario here because my bottles are made locally; they're artisanally made, so I don't get a very sort of even bore profile on my bottles. So I have to be so it's not easy to find a cork that will necessarily work. I mean, I've tried so many different types of closures, tea stoppers, which I use for my gin. And I was tearing my hair out trying to find a solution that would work for me, because on a normal bottle you expect a fairly even bore profile, but in mine it's quite uneven, and that comes with the territory of having bottles made the way they are here. But I've put a list of values, factors, and then I kind of weight them. Say in my instance, so the perceived value of the cork. So my gin and my rum, I consider sort of boutique products, so they're priced high, and I want people to, when they see it, sort of appreciate the value of everything that's gone into it, from the the fact that we make our glasses, the bottle here, and the closures. But I mean, I think so when they open the bottle, I can just say an example. So I've got a wax seal on mine, so it has to be compatible with adding a wax seal to it. And that one scenario, because for instance, when I've tried to use tea stoppers with a separate, when the sort of the actual bore of the cork is glued into the top of the cork, I've had problems of separation of the glue. The humidity here is particularly bad, and it's caused problems for me. So in fact, a one-piece stopper is my best solution to overcome that. But cost, so I've put costs, like if you look at my weighting here, so I put perceived value high, the cost is low. So my cost, I prefer to go for the quality of the products, and the cost is not as important. Obviously, the two key factors are lifetime and resistance to damage, because I found with using natural cork, and in fact some of the, not like, I don't know what you call it, when the cork particles are stuck together with a lot less glue, so it's not really agglomerated, it's kind of the shaving stuck together. They basically, because I've got this kind of sharp, almost a sharp edge in my bore profile at the top, once you've opened and closed the bottle a few times, you end up getting some particles coming into the liquid, and that's not okay for me. I put recycling and carbon footprint reasonably low, but it's because I kind of combine them together to add the value. So really they would be on a 4, either recycling and carbon footprint kind of come together, because my understanding was that some of the agglomerated corks with thermoplastics are not readily mixed with normal plastics for recycling, which is why I guess the advantage of this new one that you guys have got, the Segura which uses the biodegradable polymers, is a great solution, and it overcomes that problem completely. So, and then ease of sourcing. Obviously, if I can't get hold of it, then that doesn't work for me. So then, by the time I've kind of given them a score from each of the types: natural cork, synthetic, agglomerate with thermoplastic, and agglomerate with the natural binder. So once I've added the weight to them, you can see over here, well, synthetic won it for me. Really, because I can't source agglomerate corks here. Like the supplier here doesn't offer the ones that Labrenta do. I would go for that if I could get hold of it. natural cork comes down low because I've tried to use it and it just doesn't. I just don't like the damage it does over time to the for the particle damage. So I mean, gives you an example of how I would judge it, but that's very specific to my situation. So other people would value other things differently. Like my bottle is quite unique in that way. In fact, on my rum bottle, I use a slightly different closure. It's a synthetic, but it's not a tea stopper. It's a conical cork, conical synthetic stopper, and I use wax on it because I have some of my bottles. My bore profile again is like right at the top. It's so varied. My tolerances are low. So, in fact, when I last had some bottles made, I had to return sort of 30% of my bottles to get remolded because the corks just weren't sitting in them properly. And in fact, so my solution with the rum, because I couldn't bear to have to break down all those bottles and start again, was to use this conical one, which will accommodate a different size. It'll just obviously go in a little bit further or not into the bottle, so I can then accept like almost 100% of the bottles they make, which is a huge win for both of us really. And then I dip it in wax, so that gives it that sort of slightly nicer sort of boutique look, and I can obviously put a seal on top, so that solves that problem quite nicely. But just to give you an example, actually on our 200s, we started using that type of cork particles stuck, but not really with the polymer. And that I can see even just a couple of particles of cork in it. So that in the end, I had to switch to synthetic with that one as well. So really, that's kind of an oversight of where I'm at. I'm happy to field any questions on that if there are any.
Just from our perspective, we're very much on that journey. But what I really loved about the way Alex took us through that was it was very clearly a values-based decision. There was a set of criteria that were at the front that were clearly aligned to the brand. And I also love the fact that you mentioned wax finishing. I think when you're in the premium spirits space, actually removing the closure is a part of the experience that the brand is offering. And unless we can deliver the internal closure in a way that allows us to have that finish on top, it's really important. But I've actually learnt some things listening to you, Alex. That was really helpful.
Yeah, really interesting. I love the fact that you're not only thinking about the sustainability of the closure, but like the whole product as well. Like, okay, you can use more of your glass because you've changed your stopper. And I think that's a really interesting approach. I love it. I think it's really good.
Just to start from the end, the aim of Labrenta is enhance the moment. Is exactly that moment that should be a joyful moment, and that's where we are trying to outstand the expectation of the final customer. Alex at some point experienced some kind of separation between the leg and the top, and that's totally normal. It happens so many times in the past. That's why we improved with the no-glue system, because with the no-glue system, there is no way that to happen, because the leg will become just one part with the top, and it's going to be impossible. It's also if you're going to be placed like the Alex area or the Scottish area in a high humidity zone. One advantage, as Alex said, about the synthetic and the sugar materials that you can find compared to natural and micro corks, doesn't have any kind of crumbling, because you might have experienced in your life with natural cork that some kind of dust may fall into the liquid. With that type of solution, it doesn't happen, because it's simply impossible, because it's a monoblock. And then last but not least, the problems that Alex found when it comes to the suitability of the corks with the glass, it's really important for us that doesn't happen with hundreds or thousands of bottles out of the shelves. So every time we do have a new project, or every year, we ask for 3 bottles from the production lot in order to run tests we do have a laboratory, a facility internally where we're going to run tests, and we're going to be sure that that type of size, that type of length, that type of lubricant is going to be suitable for that particular bottle, but also for that particular liquid, because it's not just a problem about leaking, but you can have also a problem of pop-up because of high volume of alcohol that the liquid contains normally in the spirits. So that was just a couple of points that I rescued from the Alex intervent.
Yeah, so the interesting thing you mentioned about that as well, yeah, because pop-up was a problem I definitely had, because, well, when you dip in wax, not only have you got the volatile alcohol, but you've got it now hotter, so it's going to expand that gas space even more and want to pop that cork up. And actually, I had a problem when I shipped, once I shipped to Australia, and the customs here, obviously you get the green channel or the red channel when you export, and if you get the red, they'll then open up the entire pallet. And I got well, fortunately, I got some photographs of this inspection getting done, and it was out in the midday sun in the middle of the summer, and they've just opened up the pallet and left it out in the sun, and the wax was started to melt on some of them, and obviously that's going to cause me more problems. But in fact, one of the newer changes I've seen that's helped me massively with that is the bezel in some of the corks. So you've got this, I don't know what you call it there, the terminology correct is, but you've got this kind of bezel groove in the bore of the cork, which basically massively changes the pressure in the closure, because you've only basically got half a centimeter of pressure.
Yeah, we do call it vent. It's just a small channel that is made on the leg, and it helps obviously to avoid pop-up. But that's totally under discretion of our technician Damiano, who is in charge of the whole process in terms of test, and he is the master. So I really trust him. When I got a new project,
he's definitely a master, because it's the best invention ever. I can't tell you how that's changed my life. Because it solved a lot of problems for me.
Yeah, but still sometimes is not enough, because if, as you said, some of the bottles you're going to receive are going to be out of tolerance, then, for example, the difficult one are the internal bores like that. When you go internal bores like that, that's definitely not impossible, but that's really, really difficult to prevent such problems like you described.
Yeah, so when I go to my, I lost, due to COVID, I lost one bottle manufacturer supplier. He closed his artisanal arm, and I moved to another one. I did trials with them, and only like 15% of the bottles passed inspection for me. I test certain aspects of it. Obviously, the bore profile and the ability to close it is key. And that was an absolute disaster. I thought, Christ, what am I going to do? I don't want to import my bottles. And then I did trials with these other guys who are willing to learn. And I went down and said, look, these are the things we need to get right. Please, can you, if I work with you, I know we can make this work. And, well, my background was in mechanical engineering. So we managed to find solutions and taught them how to make them in a certain way that they would work for me. And then added to the solution of using this conical cork for my rum label, then that solves, and it prevented even more wastage of bottles, which was great.
Yeah, so it's has an impact on everything. I guess different types of sustainability in stoppers, whether it is sort of price and reliability or aesthetics, and sort of we've spoken quite a lot about that. But I don't know if there's anything else in terms of when we're looking at the price of stoppers, whether the price, the reliability, or the aesthetics matters more. But I guess that's, as we went through with Alex, I guess that's going to be completely down to you as a producer and where your tick boxes are and what it is you want to achieve, where you're going, how much your volume is as well. And obviously everything like that will have an impact on what you decide to choose, right?
And what's available also nowadays.
Yeah. What you can get your hands on.
Can I just ask a quick question to Alessandro? Do you make in your Sierra excuse pronunciation, closure, do you do the conical? Do you do it in a conical version, or do you just do it in the kind of T-stopper and the kind of straight bore? Do you do that conical type in it or not?
It's a molded material. It means that we can do even the Eiffel Tower if we want with that.
So it would have to be specially made, but you don't have one in your kind of your line.
I mean, it really depends by the sizes. I would need to have a look at the sizes. We do have a great range of sizes and shapes, but yeah, everything can be produced.
I can have a chat with you offline about that.
Of course, especially because just for your knowledge, internally we do have a molding facility, so we do produce our mold internally, and along with the experience, we really been able to create every shape mind can imagine.
So I have another question. So we obviously have touched a little bit on recycling of stoppers, but how recyclable are various types of stoppers? I don't know the answer to that. Obviously, cork's naturally biodegradable, right?
The problem is where you are located, because the law change in each part of Italy. So you can imagine in each part of the world. Obviously, natural cork is biodegradable, but you should avoid to throw it just on the floor like that, because it will be not really ethical. So sometimes it's general waste, sometimes it's recyclable. It really depends. The majority of the closure, anyway, at least in Italy, where we are you need to throw it into the general waste at the moment.
And I think that's, by far and above, that's the common situation in most markets around the world. There's a attitude that recycling isn't universally adopted anyway. And so until we can solve for consumers that will tend to dispose of a total package with everything versus the consumers that will isolate which bits of a product are recyclable, we're gonna face this problem. And again, sorry to repeat myself, but we need legislative change across the regions that exist. Otherwise, that doesn't become any easier. I think there's also, it would be interesting to see what the inter-country framework will look like, where we start to really move beyond shipping our waste around the world, which is another factor in all of this. And becoming right back to the closure. I mean, it's, for me, sorry, Alessandro, but the ideal solution doesn't exist yet. I'm looking for something that is so simple for the consumer to understand and easy for us to not just put on the bottle, but also get down our line. That's another consideration for us at our point of scale. We have some automation in our bottling hall, and so whatever we put on is going to need to make it down the line. But for me, it needs to be kept simple, and we're not there yet.
At the moment, sustainability when it comes to closure is more focused on the ethically sourcing of the materials than the end life. Because the end life at the moment, it's really difficult to say, to understand, and to interpret the law as well. But the focus is the sourcing of that.
Yeah, it needs a lot of alignment, but I totally agree. It's not just where it ends up. It's sort of making sure that you can sort of ensure that where it's coming from in the beginning is coming from the right place as well. So whether that's not using virgin materials or whatever. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time. We're going to come to a close now, but this has been wonderful, and I hope you have a great afternoon. Thank you so much all for taking part.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Rosie.